The question is, they were supposed to be nonviolent, but almost every day we read about another heinous act attributed to an early released inmate. What's up with AB 109 and the early release of felons on Main Street, California? Is it an assault on the suburbs by out-of-touch politicians, or was it good public policy to reduce our prison population and offer second chances to those who need it? Today, we will hear from the head of two state agencies dealing with thousands of early released inmates due to the prison realignment plan hatched by Sacramento 2 years ago under the threat of an action by federal judge. We will also hear from experts implementing reentry programs and the many challenges facing law enforcement as inmates hit the streets. Let's ask the question. With me today is Police Chief Kim Raney of the Covina Police Department, who is also the president of the Police Chiefs Association of California, and Jay Gomez, who is from the great city of El Monte, who is also the president of the Independent Cities of California, representing 48 other cities. We're here to talk about AB 109 prison realignment. Chief, the day after Sacramento voted on AB 109, Steve Cooley, the district attorney of Los Angeles County, said this will result in the biggest increase of crime in California in 60 years. Was he right? What happened?
I think time will tell if Steve Cooley was right. We're two years into this, 20 months into realignment. I'm afraid he might be, though. That's the concern, is that AB 109 solved the state problem. The state lowered their prison capacity, lowered their prison population, they cut their budget. But what they did, in essence, is they pushed that challenge and those problems down to the county, and they pushed it back in our communities. So at a time where, for the last generation, crime rates in California have been at historic lows, we're coming out of a recession where police departments lost employees, lost police officers, and now we have a population in our communities who historically have been in a custody environment, and now they're out in our streets and they're reoffending. And we're seeing property crimes go up. We're starting to see an increase in violent crimes. The crime stats are just starting to come out, and so far the indications are not good that crime is on the uptick in California.
Now, these were supposed to be nonviolent offenders. Have we seen an increase in violent crimes? Was there a flaw in the way AB 109 was drafted in how it identified someone as nonviolent?
Well, here's the myth. They call them nonviolent, non-serious, non-sexual. The reality is, when the state tried to lower their population, they did assessments on the people they wanted to release, and they couldn't hit the number because they assessed as too high of risk. So then they created this term, non-serious, non-violent, non-sexual.
Right.
And they only evaluate the person on their last incarceration offense. So you could be in custody or have been in custody before for a series of violent crimes, but if your last commitment offense was a property crime or what they thought was non-violent, you came back to our community, and that's the challenge.
Right, and I guess that gentleman up in Sacramento, I use the word gentleman facetiously, who was released on a parole violation as his nonviolent, it didn't pick up the fact that he had prior history of armed robbery. So he was classified as nonviolent, even though he had once committed an armed robbery, and 12 hours after being released, assaulted his counselor. Outrageous. Jay, representing 48 cities, what are you hearing from the council members and the city leaders and the law enforcement folks in those cities that you're representing? How are they dealing with AB 109? Are you seeing an increase in crime?
Anthony, you know what? It's not just our elected officials, our police department. Our communities are having to deal with this. All of a sudden now, since these inmates were transferred to county jails, and specifically I'm talking about LA County, that was busting at the seams already anyway.
Right.
Now you have more criminals or early release inmates out in the streets. The lack of communication has been a problem between those being released to those local municipalities. Cities and police departments are strapped on their budget, and we're supposed to continue to stay on top of these individuals.
What type of communication are you having with the county, with the sheriff's department, with those entrusted to parole? How is that working in your community?
Well, in our community, just say example El Monte, I took the initiative to meet with LA County Probation to start working with probation to get response on those being released. And hopefully, we've been told that some of our cities will have probation officers in-house. But that had to be initiated by independent cities.
By the independent city. Chief, the California Police Chiefs Association, as we all know, when AB 109 went into effect, or when it came to the floor for a vote, there was no hearing at the Public Safety Committee, no opportunity for the chiefs to come in a public meeting and actually be constructive or, point out any of the flaws. Then it passed. What are the chiefs doing now in their advocacy role? Tell me some of the efforts to try to improve or tweak or make AB 109 more palatable.
Well, here's the issue, is there was no funding set aside for cities and for municipal police departments.
Right.
The state shifted the funding to the counties, and then 58 counties decided how they were going to distribute that money within their
Each
county.
county separately.
Each county has
Right.
their own formula. In Los Angeles County, the decision was made to share zero funding with the municipal cities, including the city of Los Angeles. So we met
So
with
the county kept all of the money.
the county. In their defense, the county is not getting enough funding for their operation.
Right.
So the feeling was, if they're not getting funded enough, they were not going to share that down with the cities. So
Now, will that change after Prop 30 passed? Or is
Prop
that
30 passed, and so what happened is myself and the past president, Chief Seaman from Los Gatos, we met with the governor last year and started the conversation is that we need to have a carve out from the state directly to the cities for frontline law enforcement. We're not getting it from the counties. So when Prop 30 passed, then the municipal police departments ultimately got $24 million last budget for frontline law enforcement. It's not nearly enough money. That's
$24 million for the whole state?
statewide. Here in Los Angeles County, we
That's
got
490 cities.
it's probably over that now. In LA County, we got $6.8 million. So what we've had to do is we've stood up now probation compliance teams throughout LA County, staffed with police officers, probation officers embedded in those, and we're starting to go out and do compliance check with those people in our communities, make sure they're meeting the terms of their probation, they're being held accountable, they're being successful, but if they're not and they're reoffending, then there's consequences.
Jay, you've recently been up to Sacramento and tried to shake a few trees and talk to a few of our elected colleagues up there. How was your trip?
It was very interesting, Anthony. It was very interesting. I took with me a few of the elected officials from different cities, from independent cities. And
Both Republicans and Democrats.
and we met with both sides of the aisle. Some explained and supported what a disaster this is, and others had their head buried so deep in the sand, it was surprising how they make decisions anyway.
Well, that's been one of the things that has surprised me is I think the haste it was adopted, a 900-page bill, no public scrutiny, no public hearing, shows up on the floor. There's been a hesitancy to try to tweak it in a way to make it even somewhat successful. It's almost like that no one wants to admit that it's flawed, and so nobody wants to fix the flaws. And so I think the key is what you're doing is the local cities have to go up there, and as you've talked about, it's not just the elected representatives, but almost every day you turn on the television and there's a story from Stockton or from Sacramento or from Redding or LA County of something being attributed to an AB 109 inmate, and we've got to do something about it.
I couldn't believe I met with one office who said there is no early release program in LA County. That is not true,
Right.
Mr. Gomez. And that's the furthest thing from the truth.
Right.
Is the effect of that, if I'm not mistaken, part of this realignment, there was a quadruple murder in Northridge,
Right.
a individual burn at a bus station, and that's all attributed to this realignment.
There was the guy in Stockton who killed his grandmother, probably the one person in his life who loved him, and he got out and again was misclassified as nonviolent and, you know, was a violent sexual predator and did a heinous act. Let's change a little bit to, these are the cards we've been dealt. They're lousy. It wasn't thought through. Chief, what are we going to do?
One of the challenges is that there was no money set aside to study the impact of realignment. Normally when there's a major shift in public policy like that, legislatively they shave off some money so they can study it. They didn't do that.
Right, so they can track the success.
Exactly. And so for the first 20 months, there's really been no data collection because there's no money to pay
No
for that.
data collection
No
for
data
20
collection.
months.
Right. So the chiefs now, we're collecting data.
That's beyond needing for transparency. That's just outrageous.
I wouldn't disagree with you. Stanford University got some funding, and so we're part of that, and we're meeting with Stanford University for the next 12 months. They're going to study the impact of realignment in California. What we're doing is we've already discovered some of the gaps in the legislation. We need some legislative solutions and fixes. We have some bills up in Sacramento. We're trying to get those through to cover some of those gaps. One of them includes a tail or probation on people coming out of county jail. If somebody now pleads guilty to a crime, they go to county jail, and they do their complete sentence, which is reduced already because of capacity problems, they're coming out in our communities with no supervision. We need that supervision piece. There's several legislative solutions, but there's some reluctancy to pass it because of politics in Sacramento.
Right, and some of the supervision, the electronic monitors are being tampered with as well, and I know there's some efforts to make that a crime, but how easy is it to disarm one of those ankle monitors that are supposedly keeping track of some of these folks?
There's stories of sex offenders cutting those off and walking into the probation officer, parole officer, and putting them on their desk because they know there's no consequences. So Senator Liu down in the South Bay had some legislation. If you cut your bracelet off, you go back to state prison. It's been amended several times. Now you can cut it off up to 3 times before you go back to state prison. The first 2 you go to county jail for small terms. Then the third offense you go to state prison finally.
Right. Definitely, Senator Ted Lieu was on the right track because without a consequence to that, they're just going to keep cutting it off. I wish they would make it stronger, not weaker. So the chiefs, you're also working with rank and file law enforcement as well. I mean, there's a united law enforcement front to try to make lemonade out of this horrendous situation.
We're working with rank and file. We're working with the California State Sheriff's Association. We have identified some of the problems, and now we're trying to get those legislative solutions and fixes. Problem again is politically. I think some people feel, well, if we react too fast, we'll get beat up politically because it'll be an admission that we created some bad legislation.
And Jay, as you know, that's the hardest thing in the world to do, is to get a politician to admit they made a mistake, and they haven't figured out that if you just say, I messed up and I'm sorry, people will forgive you a lot quicker than if you continue to just push it out of the way. You're working obviously with the independent cities and the 48 cities. How are you working statewide with the League of Cities and other allies to push this agenda, which is truly a bipartisan problem, which needs a bipartisan solution?
We're working all together. You know, we're just asking Sacramento, the lawmakers, to communicate with us, to work with us, to bring some sort of support so we can deal with this. It's here now. It's not going to go away.
It's not going to go away. On that note, Chief, what you have a last thought you want to add on this issue globally or small? I mean, what do you want to say?
Well, it's not going to go away. People need to pay attention. People need to be vigilant and be aware of what's going on in their communities. But what I'm afraid of is we are at the cusp of a criminal justice system with no justice. Criminal
justice system with no justice. That's a scary thought. Obviously, you see the courts are being unfunded. You've seen this mandate get given to the local cities without funding. Obviously, I think passage of Prop 30 was a step in the right direction. It's called AB 109, Prison Realignment, a 900-page complete overhaul of the criminal justice system that didn't have a vetting. In our next segment, we're going to hear from folks on the front lines of actually dealing with the reentry problem, the recidivism problem. You heard about what happened. We're going to hear about some of the solutions. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Jay, for being here on today's question.
I'd like to take you somewhere where nobody else can go. Only the two of us know.
With Charter, TV will never be the same. Now you can make a date with your favorite movies and shows anywhere and anytime with on-the-go content from Charter.
Looking for in-depth, meaningful coverage of politics in your city, your state, your nation? Stay in touch, stay up to date, stay informed with Charter California Edition. 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. daily on the California Channel 177. Join host Brad Pomerantz for insightful, extended conversations with political leaders representing you and your communities. From Los Angeles to Long Beach, from Sacramento to San Luis Obispo, from D.C. to the IE. Charter California Edition. Stay informed, California.
Welcome back to The Question Is. As we've been discussing, is AB 109 working? With me today we have Dominic Correy, a chaser, and we'll get into that in a second. We have the Assistant Sheriff, Terri McDonald, with us, and we have the Reverend Peter Laarman from Justice Not Jails. Our first question, Dominic, to you. You're a great, terrific person. You came into this situation with 2 strikes. You've been through the system. How is it that today you're making it work and you're helping other kids turn their life around? What worked for you?
Well, somebody gave me an opportunity, Dr. Michael Ron, to help mentor kids and give back to my community. She believed in me and gave me a chance to change my life. And at the time I had got out the state penitentiary out of High Desert, I had just had a daughter. I had a daughter to be born, and I wanted to step up to the plate and be that man and be a father in her life. And then I was able to go back to school, which has been the biggest impact in my life, because I'm learning and I'm getting knowledge, and I know my rights, my wrongs and rights now. And
you're close to graduating, right?
I'm 2 quarters away from graduating
2
from Cal Poly Pomona in a double major in psychology and ethnic and women's studies.
Wow, congratulations. We're going to hear more about the Chaser program in a bit. Sheriff, thank you for joining us today. You probably are the person who knows the most about AB 109 and the reentry situation and the recidivism problems. How are we going to make this work? What are we going to do now that these are the cards that are dealt and we have thousands of inmates coming to, in particular, Los Angeles County, but around the state? It's a state problem and issue. What are we going to do?
So, first of all, thank you for inviting us here. And what Dominic talked about is what we need to do, which is when people join, whether it's a prison or the jail system, we do a risk evaluation and needs evaluation on them when they come in the door. And that we're providing services for them while they're in the system and robust reentry programming. And I can talk later about what we're doing in LA County jails, but we're doing an education-based incarceration program to begin to target, to help young men like Dominic that want to make their lives better.
So education being a key component, because that leads to opportunity and jobs, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, how are we funding that?
So that's funded in LA County through the Inmate Welfare Fund primarily. And so offenders are able to buy canteen items and different things, and there's a surcharge above that. And we use that to re-benefit the population by providing programming. Additionally, the state gave funding under AB 109 to LA County. Some of that is augmented for programming.
Now, originally the state did not send the funding in the first go-round, or was the funding there from the beginning, or do we still need more? If you could.
So the funding was there from the beginning. In the original augmentation, it was about $800 million. And the original challenge with that is it wasn't constitutionally protected.
Right.
And so the counties were legitimately concerned that the money would go away in the next budget cycle. And so Proposition 30 was passed, and it provides a permanent revenue stream to the counties. But certainly people can argue that there's not enough money. There's really not enough money for everything we need to do, whether it's schools or jails or prisons, and it is a challenge. But we'll work with the faith-based community and through grants and through every avenue that we can work with to provide programming through the jail system.
Before I go to Peter, I do want to, I'm glad you mentioned Prop 30, because that was an important part of Prop 30. Obviously the school piece got most of the press coverage and got most of the commercials and the media. But one of the reasons why I personally supported Prop 30 was that it was going to try to help create that dedicated revenue stream for the implementation of AB 109, because obviously if you send the bodies, you send the inmates to the counties, if you don't give the counties the resources to deal with it, it's going to continue to facilitate more release and more neighborhood problems. You mentioned the faith-based component of this issue. With us we have Reverend Peter Laarman. Tell us about how you've been interacting with both the county agencies and programs like the one Dominic's associated with to try to help create an opportunity for these inmates who are getting out.
Well, we think the faith communities have a dual role. The first one, of course, is to welcome the returning people, members of their communities, to understand the connection between the welfare of those individuals and the flourishing of the community, but then also to address the public policy issues around this. As you know, each of the 58 counties in California could shape its own response to realignment.
Right.
And that's a very interesting proposition, because at this stage, the counties can learn from one another. LA County can look at other counties. Admittedly, LA is the giant county in the state, but it can look at other counties and see how funds are distributed, how services are interfacing. Our main goal in Justice Not Jails is to support everybody who's looking at best practices, to support the preparation, the robust preparation inside.
Who's doing the best job? Which county would you say is on the cutting edge?
Contra Costa County in the East Bay is doing we think, a bang-up job in terms of the interface between community-based service providers and in-house services. We think the allocation of funds makes sense there. City and County of San Francisco doing pretty well. San Diego County is doing pretty well. So one of the things my coalition is going to do is sponsor a public forum fairly soon now, in which we invite representatives of those counties to interact with members of our leaders in our county, to see if we can't, not to embarrass anybody, but to see if we can't learn something from experiences elsewhere.
Sheriff, obviously LA County's the biggest place in getting the lion's share of those inmates who are being shifted from the state to the county level, so we have the biggest problem. LA County obviously has an urban corridor, but is surrounded by suburban communities, and you do see a higher incidence of B&E in some of the break-ins in some of the suburban communities. Walk me through, you get 1,000 inmates come into the county jail system. Walk me through what we're doing right, where our challenges are, and what we can do from a public policy perspective to make it work better. Because obviously, I mean, you can argue all day long whether AB 109 was a good idea or a bad idea. We're beyond that. It's the reality. So how do we make lemonade? And what do we do? What do we do?
Sure. So LA County is the largest jail system in the nation. It really, if it was in a state correctional system environment, it would be the 25th largest state system.
Wow.
So it's an enormous system. And unlike a state system that's got a more static population because everybody's sentenced, LA County, half of the offenders coming in haven't been sentenced yet.
Right.
And so there's tons of movement on any given day into the system. We currently have about 5,800 realigned offenders. So these are AB 109 folks.
5,800.
5,800
right.
Would have previously done their time in state prison that are doing their time in the LA County jail. So what we're doing better than most jail systems from my perspective, and I've seen a lot of jail systems,
right.
I've been doing this a long time, is recognizing that offenders, just placing them in a bed with nothing to do is not the right approach for criminal justice reform. That we get them and we get them into the education-based incarceration program. And that's not just education, by the way. It's substance abuse, it's cognitive-based therapies. But where we're challenged is there's simply not enough in the jails. You know, we'd like to seek expansion of that. One of the other challenges of realignment is, had these offenders been sentenced to state prison before, when they left the facilities, they would have been under parole supervision, which would have allowed for the state to pay for services for them when they get out. Mm-hmm. Currently in LA County, we're getting very few offenders who are getting what's called a split sentence, which means they spend a portion of their time in jail. Then when they leave, they're on probation supervision. Most of these folks are leaving with no supervision, which means a couple of things. A, that there's nobody checking on them to make sure they're okay, and B, the ones that are not
So do we
complying with
need
the
to
law.
create a system for that supervision or better fund the current situation? I mean, is that a piece of the pie that needs to be created?
It's a thing that we need to continue to work with the courts and the district attorney's office on. They did seek legislation to give an automatic probation period after they finished their sentence, and that didn't make it through. That,
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of the problems is the policymakers have been reluctant to bring necessary tweaks to AB 109 as it's been implemented. It's almost like they don't want to admit that there's some flaws that need to be corrected. It's been very frustrating because several lawmakers have stepped up with some very prudent tweaks, and they just die in committee. And I wish they would get over that and listen to folks like yourself that say, you know, I want to make this work, here's how you can help me.
The great news is yesterday, for example, we were with probation, with the district attorney was there, the courts were there. I mean, we recognize it's a challenge and we all want to make it work. It just, LA County's so big, it's not as easy as a San Francisco County, which is a much smaller population.
Right.
It really is, creates a lot of lifting. But I'm proud of being here. I'm proud of the leadership of the county, and I think we'll continue to innovate to make it better.
Well, certainly the folks that I talk to are excited to have you here because, frankly, no one in the state understands this better than you do from your state history and now on the local level. So I'm here. I'm glad you're here, trying to help make it work. Dominic, tell me about the Chaser program. Tell me about. Obviously, it's a small scale, but it's working. That personal contact that you bring to those troubled youth that you're chasing, and walk us through that.
So I'm a chaser at Learning Works Charter School in Pasadena. We also have a satellite site at Humboldt Industries in the Boyle Heights. What a chaser is, it's pretty much we're going out to chase the students to get.
You're literally chasing them down.
Literally chasing
knocking
them
on their
down,
door in the middle of the night.
calling their parents, calling the house, calling their cell phones, calling their girlfriends.
And nobody's
their
giving you
boyfriends.
gas money when you're
calling
driving
their
around.
girlfriends?
Yes, calling girlfriends. We do whatever we can to get the student engaged and keep him enrolled in school. Because as you know, the population that we have is at-risk youth, juveniles that are on probation, pregnant and parenting teens. So we get the good kids, what I would call them. But we're doing whatever we can just to get them to get their high school diploma and stay out of jail.
Get their butts in a seat and get them out of trouble.
Yes.
And
so
there's
it's
12 of you.
It's 12 chasers.
And remember, Dominic has 2 strikes.
Yes.
Dominic is a kid who almost didn't make it, who's here now giving it back.
Yes.
So it's an amazing program, and it shows that personal perspective, when properly funded, can work.
Well, I think one of the reasons why it works is because we believe in a fresh start for all our students. We give our students, let them have joy and fun when they come to school. We believe that they could have reality and potential to be great, and that's what Michael and Ron believed in me. So.
Sheriff, last word as we're getting close. What's the one thing you want to say about a challenge of realignment and how we're going to overcome it?
Substance abuse.
What
we're doing with substance abuse, we know from the state's last recidivism report that 63% of all offenders that were released 3 years prior returned to custody within 3 years. We know that those offenders who are going to substance abuse while in prison, coupled with substance abuse transition into the community, their recidivism drops to 31%. And so really targeting the needs of the offenders to the services in custody with robust reentry planning, it's a recipe for success, and so I think you'll see more of that.
I'm glad you mentioned recidivism. California has the highest recidivism rate in the world. 7 out of 10 inmates go back. We really need to tackle that because we can't have a revolving door. This has been, I wish we had more time, and I think maybe we'll come back and we'll do this again. This has been a good discussion because AB 109 is here to stay. We got to make it work. We just have to because so many people's lives are depending on it. Dominic, thank you. Sheriff, thank you. Reverend, thank you for being here. This has been The Big Question. Today's question, the question is, with Anthony Portantino. Thank you.